She fainted in my arms before I even knew her name. That was how the city's most powerful heiress crashed into my life, literally like some cruel joke played by fate. The kind of story tabloids would spin into gossip, except none of them would ever understand the way her trembling fingers clutched mine as if holding on to something more than life itself. I was just a nurse intern. Invisible, overworked and underpaid. And yet, in that single moment, her dark, haunted eyes made me feel like I was the only person who could save her. The hospital was already a battlefield that morning. Emergency alarms rang out, stretchers rattled down hallways, and I was barely keeping my balance between charts, vitals, and my supervisor's endless orders. Then she arrived escorted by 2 bodyguards in tailored suits, their presence slicing through the sterile chaos of the ER like knives. The entire staff froze when they saw her. Madison Layton, the sole heiress to the Layton Group, a name that carried weight in every corner of America. To the outside world, she was untouchable. To me, in that second, she was just a patient whose lips had gone pale. Her collapse was sudden. 1 second she was upright, refusing the gurney, insisting she didn't need help, her voice sharp with pride. The next, her knees buckled. I lunged instinctively, catching her before her body hit the floor. My heart pounded, not only from the emergency but from the intoxicating closeness of her perfume, something delicate and expensive, wrapped in the faintest trace of vulnerability. "Get her to exam room 3 now," my supervisor barked. But Madison's fingers had already tangled in the sleeve of my uniform, holding on with surprising strength. Her lips moved, whispering words too soft for anyone else to hear. "Don't leave." Something inside me fractured. I didn't know this woman, yet my chest tightened as if I had been carrying her pain for years. That was the first time I realized nothing in my life would ever be the same again. New York in early spring has a way of mocking you, bright skies over streets still lined with piles of dirty snow, blossoms blooming against the chill. I walked home that evening exhausted, her words echoing in my head. Don't leave. For some reason, those 2 words wouldn't let me go. My apartment was a shoebox in Queens, the kind of place where you hear every neighbor's fight through thin walls. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes and stared at the ceiling like some lovesick fool. Except it wasn't love. Not yet. It couldn't be. I told myself it was nothing more than adrenaline, the residue of saving a high-profile patient. But the truth was crueler. The truth was that when Madison Layton's eyes met mine, I saw something I shouldn't have. Something raw. Something human. Something she probably fought to bury under diamonds, bodyguards, and headlines. And God help me, I wanted to uncover it. The second time I saw her, she was sitting up in bed with an four drip, looking like a painting that had been smudged by reality. Her silk robe slipped off one shoulder, revealing a fragility that contrasted violently with the polished image she carried outside those walls. Her gaze found me instantly, sharp yet soft, like she had been waiting. "You," she said, her voice hoarse but commanding. "Stay." I froze, clutching her chart against my chest. My supervisor frowned, about to intervene, but Madison's hand lifted slightly, a gesture that silenced the entire room. Power radiated from her even in weakness. And somehow, absurdly, she chose to aim that power at me. I stayed. I checked her vitals, changed her for, and tried desperately not to notice the way her eyes followed my every move. She asked my name, and when I whispered Emily, it sounded different in her mouth, like the syllables had been painted with gold. "Emily," she repeated slowly, as if memorizing it. I should have kept the distance. I should have been professional, invisible, just another nurse in her endless parade of staff. But I didn't. Because the truth was, something about Madison Layton's presence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Dangerous. Irresistible. One step closer and I'd fall. The tabloids were already buzzing outside. Word spread quickly when the heiress of a multi-billion-dollar empire ended up in a public hospital instead of her private wing uptown. Paparazzi camped on the sidewalk, hoping to snap pictures of her in a vulnerable state. Reporters called it a mystery illness. Her family released no statements. Inside, though, the story was different. Madison didn't want to go to her father's hospital. She didn't want to see the doctors on his payroll. She insisted on staying here where nobody could control the narrative. And for reasons I couldn't comprehend, she insisted on me. When the other nurses teased me in the break room asking if I'd slipped her some magic drug to make her obsessed, I laughed it off. But inside I was terrified. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a trap. I was a nobody and she was the heir to an empire. Whatever this was, it could crush me. And yet, every time I walked into her room, her eyes softened in a way that made me forget my own warnings. By the end of the first week, we spoke in whispers no one else could hear. She asked me about my life, where I grew up, what I dreamed of. Nobody had ever asked me those questions with such genuine curiosity. "I don't think anyone sees you," she said one night, when the ward was quiet and only the hum of machines filled the air. Her words cut deeper than she knew. "Maybe that's a good thing," I tried to joke, but my voice cracked. Madison's gaze held mine. "Not to me. I see you." Those 3 words unraveled something I had kept locked away for years. All the loneliness, the invisibility, the endless effort of trying to matter in a world that never collapsed in her presence. And in that moment I realized I was already falling. I didn't know the full weight of what she carried until her father arrived. It was late evening, and the ward was half empty when the air shifted. The man himself, Richard Layton, stormed in with a small army of lawyers and assistants trailing behind. His voice carried through the halls, cold and booming, demanding his daughter be transferred immediately to the family's private facility. I stood frozen by her bedside as he entered. His eyes were sharp steel, and when they landed on me, I felt stripped bare. "Who are you?" he snapped. Before I could speak, Madison's hand found mine beneath the sheets, gripping tight. "She stays," Madison said firmly. Her father's expression darkened. "You don't get to decide that." But Madison didn't back down. Her grip tightened, her chin lifted, and for the first time I saw the fire beneath her fragility. "I do. And for reasons I couldn't explain, she had chosen me." That was when I realized this wasn't just about a patient and a nurse anymore. This was a war. A war between her world and mine, between the empire that owned her and the freedom she craved. And somehow, impossibly, I was standing right in the middle of it. Her father's presence lingered long after he left, like the smell of expensive cologne mixed with gunpowder. The entire ward had gone tense, whispers trailing through the halls about how Richard Layton's voice carried like thunder, and how no one dared to resist him. No one except his daughter. That night, Madison didn't speak for a long time. She sat on the bed, her profile lit faintly by the glow of the city outside the window. The New York skyline looked like 1,000 eyes watching, waiting. Finally, she turned to me, her expression unreadable. "You're not afraid of him, are you?" I laughed nervously. "Afraid? He could crush me with a single phone call. He probably already hates me for just standing near you." Madison's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good. Let him hate you. It means he sees you as a threat." I shook my head, gripping the chart in my hands a little too tightly. "I'm not a threat to anyone. I'm just a nurse intern," she finished for me, her tone soft. "But you're more than that. Don't let them convince you otherwise." There it was again, the way she said my name, the way she breathed life into words I had stopped believing in. Nobody had ever defended my worth like that, not even me. But the reality was suffocating. Madison Layton was a name tied to skyscrapers, to empires, to money that moved nations. And I was a girl who counted every dollar before paying rent. The gap between us wasn't just wide, it was dangerous. A few days later, the paparazzi found a way inside. I was carrying a tray of meds down the hall when chaos erupted. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks, reporters shouting questions at the top of their lungs. Hospital security scrambled to push them out, but not before they caught pictures of Madison in her robe, fragile but still devastatingly beautiful, sitting on the edge of her bed. The next morning, tabloids exploded. Layton heiress refuses family doctors, mystery nurse at her side. They printed blurry photos of me in the background, my face half turned, eyes lowered. The headlines painted me as some sort of enigma. Unknown companion. Unidentified nurse. Rumored confidant. My phone buzzed with texts from classmates, some teasing, others envious. I wanted to crawl under a rock. When I walked into Madison's room, she was holding one of the tabloids, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "They called you mysterious," she said. "I like that." "I don't," I muttered, trying to snatch the paper from her. "This could ruin me. I could lose my internship over this." Madison tilted her head, studying me with that unnerving intensity again. "Why does their opinion matter so much?" Because my entire career is at stake? I snapped harsher than I intended. You get to be untouchable. I don't. Her smile faltered, and for a second, she looked like the girl who had collapsed in my arms that first day, vulnerable, human. You think I'm untouchable? She whispered. Emily, my entire life has been one long performance. Every move I make, every word I say, it's all scripted by people who don't care if I break. You think that's freedom? Her voice cracked, and before I realized what I was doing, I sat beside her on the bed. No, I said softly. It sounds like a cage. Our eyes locked and something shifted in the air. It was no longer patient and nurse, heiress and intern. It was just two women sitting in the dark, both carrying burdens neither of us asked for. And in that quiet moment, her hand brushed mine. Not by accident. Slowly, deliberately. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I didn't pull away. Of course, it didn't take long for the hospital board to summon me. The director's office smelled of coffee and stress. He sat behind his mahogany desk, glasses perched on his nose, his expression grave. Emily, he began, folding his hands. Do you understand the gravity of the situation you're in? I swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Your name is in every paper this morning. The board is furious. We cannot afford a scandal tied to our institution. I nodded, my palms sweating. You're young, and I'm willing to believe you didn't intend to attract this attention. But for your own good, keep your distance from Miss Layton. Do your job, nothing more. Am I clear? Crystal clear. And yet, when I returned to Madison's room that evening and saw her sitting with her knees drawn to her chest, looking out the window like a prisoner yearning for escape, I knew clarity meant nothing. Because the truth was, I couldn't stay away. One night, after a grueling double shift, I found myself lingering at her door even when my shift had ended hours earlier. Something about leaving her alone in that sterile room felt unbearable. She noticed, of course. Madison always noticed. You should go home, she said gently. Maybe I don't want to, I admitted. Her lips curved, not into a smirk this time but something softer. Then stay. And so I did. We talked until dawn about everything and nothing. She told me about boarding schools in Europe, how her childhood was spent under chandeliers and scrutiny. I told her about growing up in Ohio, about working 3 jobs to put myself through nursing school. At some point, our laughter turned into silence, and silence turned into stillness, and in that stillness, her hand found my cheek. Emily, she whispered so close I could feel her breath. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. And then she kissed me. It wasn't a polished magazine cover kiss. It was messy, trembling, filled with fear and hunger and relief. And yet it was the most real thing I had ever felt in my life. I knew in that instant. There was no going back. But love, especially love like ours, does not exist in a vacuum. The morning after, her father's lawyers arrived with documents, non-disclosure agreements, threats of lawsuits, quiet offers of hush money that insulted me to my core. Madison tore the papers to shreds in front of them, her voice steel. She's not leaving. I won't let her. Her defiance painted a target on both of us. The board grew restless. The press grew louder. My family back in Ohio called, confused and worried, asking why they were seeing my face on TV. And still, every time Madison reached for my hand, every time her lips brushed mine, I knew I'd endure all of it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. The storm reached its peak 2 weeks later, when Richard Layton himself confronted us again. He barged into her room with fury, slamming the door shut behind him. This ends now, he thundered. You're humiliating our family, Madison. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Madison stood her ground, though I could see the tremor in her hands. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said. For once in my life, I'm choosing for myself. His eyes darted to me, filled with venom. And you? You think this is some fairy tale? Do you have any idea what kind of destruction you're inviting into your life? My voice shook, but I forced the words out anyway. Maybe, but she's not just your daughter. She's a human being. And she deserves to be loved on her own terms. Silence fell, heavy and sharp. Madison's father looked between us, his face unreadable. Then he turned on his heel and left, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed in my chest, half victory, half dread. Madison exhaled, her body collapsing against mine. For the first time I realized just how fragile her strength was, how much it cost her to fight against the world she was born into. And I held her, whispering against her hair, "You don't have to fight alone anymore." She clung to me like a drowning woman clings to air. And I knew no matter the cost, I wasn't letting go. That was the night our story stopped being a secret. That was the night we stopped being patient and nurse, and became something far more dangerous and far more beautiful. The world outside our bubble didn't forgive easily. After that night, we lived under a spotlight so blinding it threatened to burn us both. Tabloids twisted every detail into scandal. "Nurse seduces heiress," one headline sneered. Another called me a gold digger in scrubs. Social media exploded with venom. Strangers dissecting my face, my past, even my student loans, as if my worth could be measured in dollars owed. The hospital board, cornered by pressure from donors and Leighton lawyers, suspended me. My badge, my future, it all slipped from my hands in a single email. I packed my locker in silence, but when I walked out of those sterile halls, Madison was waiting in a sleek black car at the curb. She rolled down the window, sunglasses shielding her eyes, and simply said, "Get in." I did. Because despite everything, the headlines, the judgment, the fear, I couldn't walk away from her. Her penthouse was another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a living painting, the Hudson glinting under the sunset. Crystal glasses sparkled on marble counters, designer furniture sat untouched like museum pieces. It was beautiful but empty. "This place feels more like a showroom than a home," I murmured. Madison's laugh was bitter. "That's because it isn't a home. It's a cage made of glass." She poured herself a drink, her hands shaking just enough to spill a drop on the counter. She didn't clean it. She just stared at it, lost. "I fought so hard to be seen as strong," she whispered. "But the truth is, I'm so tired of being alone." My heart broke. I closed the distance between us, gently taking the glass from her hands and setting it aside. "You're not alone anymore." When she looked up at me, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And in that moment our lips met again, not out of desperation this time, but out of certainty. It was the kind of kiss that promised a future even if the world tried to tear it away. But futures are fragile when power and money are against you. Richard Leighton launched a campaign to discredit me. Anonymous emails circulated at nursing schools, whispering about my unprofessional conduct. Job offers I applied to mysteriously vanished. It was clear. He wanted to erase me from Madison's life. The pressure took its toll. We fought. Small things, at first me guilt about losing my career, her frustration at being trapped under constant scrutiny. But beneath every argument lay the same fear. What if love wasn't enough? One night it boiled over. "You don't understand what I've lost," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Everything I worked for gone because of this." Madison's eyes flashed. "And you think I haven't lost?" "Emily, I risked my family, my inheritance, everything that kept me safe. Do you think this is easy for me?" Silence hung between us, heavy and cruel. Finally I whispered, "Maybe we're asking for too much. Maybe this world won't let us be together." Her face crumpled like glass shattering. And in the silence that followed, I walked out. Days turned into weeks. I moved back to my tiny apartment in Queens, working part-time shifts at a low-paying clinic. Every night I lay awake replaying her voice in my head, the way she said my name, the way she saw me when no one else did. But I convinced myself it was over, that maybe letting go was the kindest choice. Until the night the clinic doors burst open and Madison stumbled in, breathless, hair damp from rain. "You can't leave me," she gasped. I tried to live without you, but I can't. Emily, I don't care about the board, the papers, my father, any of it. All I care about is you." Tears blurred my vision. "Madison." She stepped closer, trembling, her hand reaching for mine. "Please, don't make me go back to being invisible again." Invisible. That word, the one she had given back to me, the one she had destroyed with her love. I couldn't deny her anymore. I pulled her into my arms, rain and all, and kissed her with every ounce of forgiveness I had left. The battle wasn't over. But this time we fought together. Madison went public. In a press conference broadcast across every major network, she stood tall in front of flashing cameras, her hand in mine. Yes, she declared, her voice steady. Emily is the woman I love. And if that makes me unfit to inherit my father's empire, then so be it. I will not apologize for my heart. The world erupted. Some cheered us, others cursed us. Hashtags trended, op-eds debated, stock prices dipped and climbed. Her father raged, threatened, disowned her. But Madison didn't waver. For the first time she was free, not because she had money or power, but because she had chosen her own truth. And I stood beside her, not as a nurse intern, not as a scandal, but as the woman she loved. Months passed. The storm began to quiet. The press moved on to new scandals, the board replaced its outrage with silence, and slowly, piece by piece, we rebuilt our lives. I found work again. Not at a prestigious hospital, but at a community health center where patients thanked me with genuine smiles. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Madison started her own foundation, independent of her family's empire, funding healthcare programs for underprivileged neighborhoods. She said it was inspired by me. By us. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting our apartment in gold, she turned to me with that same look she had the first day in the hospital, vulnerable yet fierce. Emily, she whispered, holding a small velvet box in her hands. I know we've fought the world and each other. I know it hasn't been easy. But I also know this, you're my home. Will you marry me? My breath caught. The girl who once thought she was invisible, now standing at the center of the world because one woman had dared to see her. Yes, I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. 1,000 times yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger, her hands shaking, and when our lips met, the city lights outside blurred into nothing. And that was how a nurse intern, invisible to the world, and an heiress trapped in a glass cage, found something stronger than money, stronger than fear, stronger than the empires built to keep us apart. We found love. Real. Defiant. Unbreakable. And for once, the ending wasn't tragic. It was ours. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.